Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory episode. But is it even a Mordian Glory video? Or is it, in fact, a Luetin09 episode? I have the man, the myth, the legend, the lore master himself in the MG Battle Bunker with me today. Well, virtually, I should say. You're not sat right beside, you know, the restraining order doesn't allow that. But how are you doing, my good man? Thank you for being here.
I had 4 hours sleep last night. I'm feeling great, so it's all good. Yeah.
Is that the raw excitement of the collab? You were like, oh, I can't wait to come and do a collab with MG, because that's how I felt last night.
I'm trying to finish a script and I fell asleep at my desk, and then my daughter woke up too early, so that's what happened.
Nice, yeah. Oh man. So dude, seriously, I want to say a massive thank you for coming on. And for those that don't know, old Lutz here, as the stream chat has named him, has actually become a bit of a regular face in the streams. And then I think at one point you jumped on for like an impromptu collab, and you ended up running my stream for 10 minutes because I had to go AFK, and I was like, hey Lutz, can you take over? Like, yeah, of course, man. And then ever since then we've been sliding into DMs and stuff, and it's been a beautiful thing. So Lutz, I want to say not only thank you for being on, but also thank you for coming into the streams and all that good stuff.
Yeah, no worries. I think it's good to be sort of more out in the community. I tend to sort of hunker in my little bunker and just stick to myself. I don't like to. People always say, oh, have you seen this? Have you seen that? Have you seen that? I'm like, no, I haven't. I try to stay very tunnel vision on what I'm doing most of the time. But I do like to chill and relax with a nice stream in the evening. And there's loads of people obviously chatting in the space about Warhammer, but I like to go to games and stuff as well, as do we all. So yeah, it's nice to come around and mix. And I just like seeing interesting opinions from the community about the tabletop, more about the tabletop than the lore, because I'm kind of I've got my opinion about the lore.
Yeah.
I try to avoid having my opinion or my thoughts contaminated by other stuff. That's not to suggest that it's not interesting or productive sometimes to have a discussion about things happening in the lore, like why haven't Lion and the Gilliman got together yet, what's happening in this next Dawn of Fire book, etc. All of those things are good, but at the same time I want to ensure that I've looked at the material, had my own thoughts first, because one thing I learned a long time ago with gaming is content creation, it's very, very easy to, even not intentionally, just completely passively, sort of indirectly, have your opinion contaminated.
So what you're saying is you're like Ron Swanson and you know more.
No, it's nothing at all like that. In fact, it's nothing at all like that.
Luetin09 exposed. Luetin09 exposed.
When I used to do Battlefield content so long ago now, there was another content creator much bigger than me, and comically the polar opposite to me. I still, as I am now, used to be very serious, matter of fact about doing my content, and they were the polar opposite. And in many ways I was just I don't know, didn't have too much in common. But one point I remember we were sort of chatting because we had gone to an event or something, and he was like, the things you need to know are, don't look around at other channels. Don't think about what those people are doing. Don't look at what other content people have been making. Stick on what you are doing. Because if you start looking at what everybody else is doing, you'll start second guessing yourself. You'll see a video that someone did that did really well, and you'll think, oh my God, do I need to do that? And before you know it, you can't have a clear thought about what you are trying to do.
Yeah.
So it's much, much better to just stay focused, clear on where you are going, which is why sometimes people there'll be hot topics going off in Warhammer, and then I come out with some random video about some old piece of lore, and it's not at all in the sort of current space of things, because I'm just kind of interested in that. I also, one thing I hated back in the day of doing sort of Battlefield stuff was just the grind, every day, new video, and also within that you have this thing of jumping on the bandwagon, what's the hot news. But I just found that wasn't a good model for how I wanted to produce content, and so I try to steer fully away from that. I'm just I'm going to deal with stuff which is just established, and therefore it doesn't need that kind of rush to get onto it.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's where I am. Things.
No, man, that's really interesting, and I know a lot of people will be very curious to know your thought processes, your sort of methodology, as it were, because obviously, you know, people love the Luetin09 content. I will say, I've been watching your stuff for years, man. First video of yours that I watched, the Tyranid one, you know, like 30-minute long Tyranid one. I don't know if that was like the first one of your things that like blew up, but that was like the first one that I saw, and ever since then, yeah, been an avid enjoyer. I know recently recently it feels like you've been making videos just for me, man, because you've been making things like Yarrick and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but no,
I think that paired with my sort of Imperial Guard project, which has been like, you know,
we got him.
A big smash of things. Yeah. Hey, listen, I showed my wife how to base infantry the other day, and she did 200 for me in one night. So.
Nice. That's oh man, I've got my missus to help me a few times with Warhammer stuff, and it's normally the negotiation process goes something like, you can order whatever you want and you can put whatever you want on the television, and I will not say a single peep or complain once. Now please help me, you know, paint this color 200 times on these Kriegsmen.
Yeah, the painting part of my Imperial Guard army is the next stage. It's daunting, but I think fine. But I think the plan will be to just like mass airbrush, and then just, you know, once you've got past that point, then you can kind of do it as and when almost. You know, you just have a few models on the table and you just jump in, think, okay, tonight I'm going to hit all the metallics, go through like 20 guys, done, you know, and then move on. Just keep steadily batch layering through everything. I think
you've got to batch paint. You've absolutely got to. I think more so than any other faction, you have to batch paint. And the reason for that is because Imperial Guard is a horde army, but the models are surprisingly detailed. Like when I painted my Tyranids, I was like, wow, it's literally 3 colors, and I'm kind of struggling to actually find more colors to put on these. I've got carapace, skin, and then some like bits for the guns, and that's kind of it. Whereas with Guard, it's like, okay, you've got pouch, you've got water bottle, you've got bayonet, you've then got the webbing, and you've got all these different colors, and you've got the backpack and whatnot. So it actually ends up being that they are quite detailed. But I think there'll be a few people out there that don't know that you are a recent convertee to the Emperor's true finest. You finally realized that Ultramarines aren't all that. So how did that happen? How did that happen?
I think I've always well, it's literally from that video I made the other day where I was talking about I've been frustrated by seeing the slow not dilution, like deterioration in the sort of Guard lore, I suppose. The fact that and I spoke about this, I'm kind of just rehashing my video now, but like in the video I did where I was talking about, like I said, well, the video is called like you'll never see these again or something, and talking about Imperial Guard not detachments, what word am I looking for? Regiments. When I started doing Warhammer in sort of the very end of first edition, because I remember the year I kind of got into it was when the second edition came out. When I first was interested in Warhammer, that second edition hadn't come out yet, and it was just like friends were basically like giving me the guys from Space Crusade, and that's why they look, you know, they're so derpy comparative to what came in second edition. You know, the Marines are just night and day. So back then, everything had this kind of rich flavor within each faction, basically. And especially the Imperial Guard with the regiments, they were very clear cut. And I remember my friend who was very into the Imperial Guard, he just had like multiple iterations of those things. And I don't know, there is a nostalgia to it for me. But just over the years as well, seeing like the Praetorians and stuff like that, all the different kinds, it really just kind of embedded them. And I said in the video, like the Guard sort of dictate and define the Imperium, because it's like, sort of when you think of Solar Auxilia, for example, Solar Auxilia, they got different colors, but they're kind of like Space Marines. They're all different colors, but they kind of like, if you just look at them superficially, they all kind of look the same.
Yeah.
Imperial Guard, I feel like not so much. If you look at Valhallans, if you look at Kadashan, if you look at Mordian, if you look at Steel Legion or Krieg, like visually, like they are very different.
100%.
They're not just all the same. And therefore it sort of speaks to the diversity of the Imperium. It's like, oh yeah, these guys come from here, these guys come from here, etc.
I think it's
and I think when you don't have that, you lose a lot.
100%. And I think what's going through my mind, hearing you say that is, actions speak louder than words, and GW, and also it's like show don't tell. In like if I read like a 10th edition codex and I read the lore in there, GW can tell me that there are many different guard regiments, but they can't show me that there are many different guard regiments. And you can pay lip service to the idea of your dudes, but when you can't show me the concept of your dudes, it really feels a bit disingenuous. And I think that's why, you could say, well, before they sold essentially like GW approved regiments like the Mordians and the Visjoins, they had like official models and everything, but there was so many of them that there was like 8 or 9 regiments, if not more, when you take into account like things from Forge World and whatnot. So it not only were like GW telling you there was a wide variety, but it felt like they had put an effort into showing you the wide variety. And then also I think a huge part of as you would say, the decline of that sort of variation in the guard is the kit bashability of the kits themselves. Because one of the great advantages of the old plastic Cadian kit was the fact that there were so many different bits that were compatible with it, both within and obviously from GW's negative point of view, without of the GW bubble. And that meant that there was a golden era before we had the big range refresh in 9th edition. There was a golden era which lasted quite a long time of every single time someone posted a picture on a forum like Daka or on a Facebook group or something like that of a guard army, of their new guard army, they had done a head swap. It wasn't much, but just taking those old models and swapping the heads completely changed the game. And I just don't feel you see that to the same degree with the new Cadians and the new Kriegers. I feel like when someone shows off, here's my new guard army, typically if they're using the new models, typically it's the official models that they've painted in a slightly different color scheme. And that's not me, I want to make something clear, that's not me crapping on the creative efforts of the community. I think that is a reflection of the fact that these models are much harder to work with.
And I think this moves towards kind of what I want to discuss, and also the talking about the event that I went to recently.
Yes.
Because essentially, like, I have recently, and this is the other thing, people think, oh, Luetin, he's all about the lore. I play the tabletop. I'm not like a hardcore play every weekend kind of person.
Nah, that's bollocks. That's bollocks. You're a sweaty tournament winner all cosplayer now. And you can't deny it. We got receipts.
No, not at all. And for me, the lore like really informs how the tabletop for me plays, in the sense that when I'm building an army, it has those lore flavors like you're talking about. And you're saying like, oh, a lot of armies now, they're just painted a different color or whatever. Not my army. My army's got a hell of a mix of stuff in there. It's got old models, new models, head swaps, custom elements that I've just sort of built onto weapons and stuff like that. Some old things that I had just knocking around from years and years and years ago.
Right in the bits box.
Some Solar Auxilia in the mix, just mashed in there, because I've just like, oh yeah, they're not original Solar Auxilia kits, they're refurbished ones. So I imagine that they find a vault on a hive world, somewhere like this, and they find the remnants of Solar Auxilia suits from sort of 10,000 years previous. But they're not pristine, they're not just perfectly intact from that time, and therefore they're not as effective. Maybe the rubber has disintegrated or the fabric elements, and they've just got the metal skeleton, basically. and they decide, hey, you know what, we're going to refurbish these, we're going to fill in the pieces, and they're going to kind of, maybe we don't fully understand how these things worked, but some tech priest on the planet, some mad tech priest is like, I'm going to have a crack at this, we're going to put them together.
Yeah, man.
And so the guys in my army that have got solar auxiliary suits, they're not going to have like special stats or whatever. They're basically just, maybe I would adjust their stat to like a very small amount just to denote that they are different. But this really got me to thinking recently about sort of where do I want to place myself? What do I want to champion as a Warhammer player, Warhammer 40,000 player?
Okay.
When people ask me like, how do you play? What do you want to speak to? Because for the longest time I've been kind of like, there's no right way to play. If you play once a month, that's fine. If you play super immersive kind of crusade style RPG games that take like multiple weekends a month to just go through, that's fine. If you play like 4 or 5 games in a day at a tournament, that's fine as well. But where do I want to be? What do I want to speak to as, in my opinion, is the best way to play from my own perspective? And I've been trying to figure this out. And the thing is it's not about like additions either. It's more about just finding where you're comfortable. The change from 8th to 9th to 10th has been massive. But despite everything people say, I actually quite enjoyed 10th. I don't have a problem with it. I personally like not having to calculate every individual piece of war gear, because I'm not that kind of and I'm not that granular of a player. And so, because for me like that for as much as you try to balance things and there's meta and all that kind of stuff, I feel like a lot comes out in the wash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you're playing and you're rolling dice and da-da-da-da-da, sure, there are going to be some matchups which dictate how things go, and it's just going to be how it is, right? If you end up with a rock, paper, scissors situation, sometimes you're just not going to be able to really overcome that. But for everything else, there's like levels of like granularity that sort of shape how it moves. For me, though, and this is the thing that was funny, because I've been practicing and playing with some guys on TTS recently to sort of get myself ready for the event and sort of become more competent at playing quickly without having to rule check certain elements all the time, that kind of thing. And when I showed him my tabletop at home and like how I had laid out, he was like hyperventilating. Because he was like, "Where's your blocking terrain? Like,
where's your L-shaped ruins?"
Because I just had a setup with like roads and some like imperial buildings and stuff like that. But it was a pretty open table that I'd done for that game specifically. Now, not everyone is going to be like that. Sometimes you'll have a ton of rock chasms and stuff like that's blocking. But the point is for me, and when I started practicing with the guys, he was just like, I can see that the win or lose is not really important for you at all. And I was like, not at all.
It's the journey.
I'm just kind of interested to see how the story of the game plays out. Now, there is a caveat to that, which is providing you don't get like tabled in like turn 2, which did happen to me when I played Kieran with Tau recently, and which we talked about already. But
join us, Luetin. Join us on this side of the Tau versus everybody else argument.
Sure. Well, but as you noted, I mean, Tau recently didn't do so well, did they? So not necessarily all in on things. I think that's a whole interesting conversation that you've talked about a lot already. So
and you would like to avoid.
Well, no, it's not even that. I think it's just it's been talked about. What else can you say?
No, I'm only teasing.
Yeah, no. But in terms of table layout, that was the point, is that the actual terrain obviously dictates how a battle can play, because obviously if you have very little blocking terrain, certain armies are going to obviously decimate others, and so that started me to think, like, have I been doing things wrong? This is what I'm getting to, is have I been doing things wrong? Have I been setting up my table wrong? Like, how does this work? Should I abandon setting up my table narratively? Should I always make sure that I have key things, like there must be blocking in the middle, this kind of stuff? And I kind of, in my brain, was like, I don't really want to do that, but maybe I have to do that, like to have enjoyable games that don't just end in turn 2, And so it's sort of, and then I sort of thought to myself, well, I'll go to this event, and then I'll see how I feel after that, because I've never really done competitive or tournament play or even just sort of organized play. I've always been more kind of casual, play at other people's places. For example, like I've gone and done stuff at Winters, and Winters isn't like a casual player. He plays like massive games all the time. But obviously his setup, style, and pace is not a tournament. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like
100%.
You play over a day, not like 2 hours or whatever. And so it's just started me on this whole journey of what is the game to me? How do I want to play? Where does the lore inform that? And some people might sort of say things like, also, well, if you're really immersive and you want to have those kind of immersive games, why not play something like the Crusade rules, right? Which they brought in. Okay.
I mean, I feel Crusade's overcomplicated, but I'd love to know what you think about it.
Well, it's possible. But again, like I said, it's kind of similar to Necromunda. You can play Necromunda in a very casual kind of way where you just chuck a couple of gangs on and smash things out. Or you can do an RPG campaign, And Crusade is kind of like that RPG campaign. You kind of do have to get all in on it. Otherwise, why bother at all?
Yeah.
But I spoke to a couple of people who do play Crusade recently. And one of them, she was like, yeah, I really wanted to enjoy Crusade. I really got, I wanted to sort of do that lore immersive element for my playing, and she was like, I had to stop because people were just too sweaty with it. They were sort of bringing like sweaty meta-ness into a narrative, and it kind of like almost contradicts the entire purpose of it. But I thought that was an interesting statement to make.
There are some players that just can't switch it off. They can't switch it off.
Yeah, and that was my thought. That was my exact thought. Was, you know what? There are people who will come to play a game with you that's like a fun, casual game, and with no intention of doing so, they will not think about the fact that they've made a list and gone, right, I need to take this because it's got to do so and so. I need to do these because for my detachment, that's how it works. I've got to take those units. There's nothing else I would take. And then this one's really powerful at the moment. I'll just bring this for secondaries, And they'll build a list, and without realizing it, will have built like an ultra sweaty list. Because that's just how their brain processes. They're not trying to be a dick.
Yeah.
They're not trying to like make you have a miserable game. It's just that's their process of going about it. Whereas my process of going about it is, right, so this guy's in charge of my army. What's his modus operandi? Like, what's his objective? Oh, you know what? Like, he probably would be like, let's get some destroyers in. That'll be, like, because they can do this and this and this. Not thinking about objectives, not thinking about secondaries, not thinking about how they play across the table, thinking about the narrative dictation of this is how it's going to go forward. And I just think, so I have been trying to come to some kind of like position in my mind where I'm happy, and I'm not quite there yet, but I'm trying to figure out what is my perfect way of playing. And I feel like ultimately it's going to be something along the lines of an edition that I feel happy with. Basically, if you're happy with a new edition, then fine. If not, I guess divert to something else. But I like to play a version of the game where mixed into it is other elements of flavor. I've said before, the 9th edition Pariah book, at the back it's got all these kind of environmental modifiers. But I've also thought about stuff like, why not grab some missions from previous editions? Just ditch the card decks and just go singular primary mission, find a real interesting mission from a previous edition, use 10th edition rules, but just play that mission, things along those sort of lines to just kind of make it more kind of flexible,
100%.
And fluffy where possible. And I've also thought about things like, people always complain about how certain models do not align with their lore, right? And we obviously know that you cannot.
The immersion breaking moments are something that can really, obviously they take you out of the game, but they can, if you have enough immersion breaking moments, it can really start making you quite salty towards 40k. And I think that's why it's interesting. We've had, over the course of 10th edition, we've had the game get ever more popular, and in many ways it's been like, quite a lot of people have been very happy with 10th edition, but there's been a lot of people which have crashed out. And I think more so than any other edition, I've seen people going to other game systems. I've seen people going to older editions. I have seen people really like on nearly any video talking about any kind of negative aspect of 40k or analyzing the state of 40k, not even necessarily negatively. You'll have a barrage of comments talking about flavor and narrative and all that kind of stuff. And I think that essentially you have this it's almost like a paradox where you've got, on the one hand, the game is growing, but it's growing in a very specific area, and a lot of people are trying to. I think a lot of people are trying to go through a similar journey to yourself, where they're trying to decide where they fit in this new 40k and this new tabletop ecosystem.
So something's got to give somewhere. I think it comes down to, like, there are endless discussions about, obviously, the separation of organized / competitive and I'm just going to say standard tabletop. I don't like the term normal. I don't like the term casual, personally. I think standard tabletop meaning kind of just open, flexible play. You know, you're sticking to the core of the rules 80%, and then maybe there's some other stuff mixed in. You know, what I was just going to say a minute ago was one of the things I kept thinking about recently was how irritating it is that death marks are basically just a unit that's become redundant for doing secondaries, when in every lore imagining of them, they're like these ultra elite snipers that are just like phasing in and out of reality and like wiping. And it's like, in reality, it's just like just nothing. I
need these guys to deep strike in and establish a locus, or behind enemy lines, or engage in front. Yeah.
To be fair, in a game I played the other day, they actually did do something, and they finished off a Custodes unit, and I was like, oh, good job, guys. You know,
I've had a tank commander killed by death marks in the last year.
Yeah,
so
you know, I mean,
they are actually
totally,
not. Yeah, they're actually not too bad.
I think they're just not reliable, and they're not strong enough for what they are. But again, in that sort of flavor of adding a twist to a game, in my mind, I sort of thought, what if you took a unit of death marks, but distilled the unit into a single model? So you kind of like combined their stats into a single one. Obviously, doesn't mean he's going to be moving like 20 inches across the board.
I mean, he is phasing in and out. I'd allow it.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose maybe you could add something similar to the rule of Grey Knights, in terms of their sort of the units which teleport forward and things like that. Or the warp spiders, the web guys from Eldar, where that insane move. I still need to finish my Eldar army, if not singularly because I want to use was it Lycus or whatever, when she's attached to warp spiders, they can like teleport, what is it, like 24 inches or something, and shoot, and then also charge still.
We don't need any more Eldar players, Lutz. Come on, get back on the guard. Get back on the guard stuff.
But yeah. So with what we were saying, I do feel like something's got to give at some point with this separation, and that's what I was talking about in terms of me finding like not the perfect way to play, but just my preference, my strong preference that I will say, this is how I play, and I would recommend you try this. You know, I really feel like things have gotten to a point where there needs to be, if not two apps. Imagine like, and also I know some people don't use it, but you know, let's just presume that the Warhammer 40k app is like the thing that people are using. Okay, for argument's sake.
Was the thing people were using. It was very successful for 12 months, and then GW was like, what if we put like 5 paywalls on this? And everyone went,
sure.
Oh, cool. Let's check out New Recruit.
I think sure. I think a surprising amount of people that I know still use it.
Yeah, I agree, actually.
Because it's mostly user friendly, especially for people that are new and are not like, you know. So just imagine that that's what people are using, okay? And you come into the app, you open it, and as you open it, 2 little icons pop up. One has an icon for standard, one has an icon for organized play. You click on which one you want, and within the organized play one, all of the most current FAQ stuff is all updated in relation to the units there. You don't have legends, you just have this streamlined version of things. Maybe there's some specific additional elements which are in there related to organized tournament play and all that kind of thing. So that's that side. You click on the standard one, you can still do your list building, etc., but it doesn't have the ultra specific drilled down rules, which are like, oh yeah, if this goes up here and this goes over here, you have to measure down and use the hypotenuse of the angle to measure across and then divide by 6. It's like, no, put all that over there. Nobody cares. It reminds me of a great one where I went to a game with somebody, and it was right after that. It was a few months back. It was a really, really big FAQ dropped. It was like 3 pages long.
Yeah.
And I had a game literally the next day. And I was like, have you had a look at that thing? No. I was like, should we look at it? No. Just played the game.
Yeah.
100% just ignored it. Because we're just like, don't care at all. I'm not sitting and reading.
Nope, then that's fine.
I'm not sitting and reading 3 pages of A4 for just playing. I'm not doing that. I just was like, I literally looked at it and went, no, and I closed it. I was just like, I'm not. I remember I downloaded the PDF and I opened it and I saw it was just this wall of text and I went, no, and I just closed it immediately. Yeah, and so here's the thing: within that standard version, Legends as well. Legends on the app.
Give me Strachan back.
So that's what you have. You've got 2 versions, an organized, streamlined one and a more relaxed one, which has Legends in the app. You can build your flavorful armies again to have great games and stuff like that. Maybe even at the bottom, there's a kind of, classic mission generator or something. You click on it and it picks a random mission from like the last 6 editions or whatever. Something mad like that. Something crazy like that. I don't know. But I just feel like there could be more done basically to lean towards those kind of players. I love adding Legends stuff into my forces. Nothing is going to stop me from doing that ever. I will always be doing that.
I've had a bit of experience with the Legends stuff, and it's so freeing when you sort of just let go and just get rid of your own, the sort of what appears to be the stigma around Legends, like they're tainted units and you can't use them anymore. And when you used to start like, I can put a Horus Heresy unit in my army. That's okay.
Yeah, hell yeah, you can.
I can put that Kratos in my army. Yeah, it's cool. I get a Rogel Dawn for the Space Marines. Yeah, sick, man. I'll use that. And it's like,
think it's too powerful? Just say it's damaged and drop its stats a bit. Who cares?
I mean, the thing is that most Legends units are underpowered, not overpowered.
Yeah.
But this does lead me to my own analysis of the 40k player's mindset, and I'll keep it brief. And I would love to get your take on this, which is you've been going through quite a personal journey, and you've been trying to find what is my favorite way to play the game. And we spoke earlier about how we have always like a barrage of comments whenever the topic of the state of 40k, whether it's in a negative light or just a relatively just analytical light, what's the status of 40k? People start crying out about flavor and all that kind of stuff. But I have a theory, and my theory is that 40k players complain about that, but actually the narrative that they really want and the flavor that they really want is, my army's law is it wins. You said before, you have people that will join a crusade campaign and they very well may have the best of intentions, but they just can't stop themselves. And I have seen so many crusade campaigns and so many Necromunda campaigns as well crash and burn 2 or 3 weeks into the whole thing, because by that point the game group had already very much divided itself along 2 lines. The people that were picking the crusade things because that's the story that they want to tell, and they were embracing the RPG elements, and they were embracing that events. They weren't just picking the very obviously more powerful options. And the people that went, well, that's the better option, so I'm going to take it. And it's very, very... my experience with 40k, especially doing it... playing it competitively for the last 10 years, but just doing it full time, both competitively and just normally, the standard play thing, as I would say, over the last 3 years, has been that it is very, very difficult, and it is very unnatural for your typical, and I don't like painting everyone with the same brush, so I do apologize, I'm putting you all in the same box, but it's very difficult to ask your average 40k player to take a worse unit. If there are two units that can fulfill the same battlefield role, and one costs 100 points and one costs 100, and it could be as little as 105 points, but let's say it's 120 points, they will go for the 100-point one every single time. And the thing is that it's a little bit of like an arms race. It's a little bit like a rat race, because if they don't, if they choose to take the less efficient option, but it's the more fluffy, more flavorful one, the problem is that they have no reward for doing that. They then just go into a game where someone else just, it's not even a sweaty list. You sort of said earlier, like they build this ultra sweaty list. Sometimes it's not even a sweaty list. Sometimes it's just, it's not like a meta list. It's not a net list. It's not something that someone went to the local tournament with, or the most recent super major and just beat 7 hells out of 7 people in a row. It could just be it's just an efficient list. That's all it is. It's not even sweaty. It's just an efficient list. Yeah. And
it's also like, what else would you take in certain combinations?
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing else that makes sense.
Exactly. And especially, with 10th edition, it's gained this nickname of the edition of loss, and a huge amount of that has come down to basically GW trimming things like Forge World away, limiting what's in the box, and blah 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 blah. And on the one hand, that has been decent for game balance. It's been all right for making things simple to get into the game. If everything you need is in that one box. So there are of course many disadvantages to it, but there are also logical advantages to it as well. And despite all of that, as we said, like people saying they want flavor, at the end of the day, the 40k community seems to say one thing, and we said earlier, actions speak louder than words, and they do another thing. And I think this could potentially lead us on to the next our next sort of topic, which is you don't necessarily. And by the way, like I said, I want you to comment on this as well, so we can lead into the next topics, a few minutes down the road, as it were. But you don't get this same attitude in other games, because I play a lot of other games now. I play Old World, I play Bolt Action, I play Horus Heresy, and what you find is the people that have that mindset of it doesn't need to be flavor before efficiency, but it could be flavor and efficiency in equal measure. They have, in many respects, now transitioned to other game systems, and and you go to other game systems, and you'll find not only the natives of that land, as it were, the people that were with Bot Action from first edition who have never picked up a game of Warhammer 40k, but you'll also find a significant portion of that community being ex-40k players who when it comes to building their lists, will actively choose to do what they never did in 40k, actively choose to downplay options in their army, because they don't want to make the game that they've gone to the same as the game that they've come from. And I think now what's left over in 40k is, in many ways, and like it or lump it, and I will put my cards on the table here and say I personally like it, and I have accepted 40k for what it has become, and I now accept that 40k scratches a competitive itch, but I am still I'm not a lizard person. I'm human, and I still need flavor. I can't just live off competitive gruel my entire life. And so whilst I scratch my competitive itch with 40k, I now go to other game systems to scratch that narrative itch. And I think that's what I feel like a lot of people are starting to do that. And that's not just my personal experience, but that is my perception of talking to people every single day about this topic. And it seems to be that you have people that will go, we came up with a term with it on the live stream the other day. One of the reasons why I think there's been such pushback from what's happened with Heresy recently is everyone was quite looking forward to going on a Heresy holiday. and now you know, a lot of 40k players were ready to go on their Heresy holiday, and now it's been cancelled due to inclement weather. But before we get to that, give us your thoughts. Is that something you've noticed, or do you think, you know, give us your perspective on that, and please feel free to push back on it.
So I made a load of notes there.
Nice. I don't make notes. I just riff.
So, well, because there was a lot of things that you were noting there. I think overall, one sort of principle is there's no perfect answer. There's no perfect answer to the question of sort of how to balance things, how to encourage people to play a certain way. And when you're talking about, like I'm saying, some people kind of almost without intending to will build a list which is horrible for other people to play against. It may be that their hands are somewhat tied by just how the units have been priced, how the game is sort of balanced out, right? But there is this other thing, and it connects with sort of what I'm talking about in terms of, you know, separation between organized and more standard games. And what that is how things are dictated by perception. There is, and this is what I find and see and hear and listen when I talk to people, is somehow whatever Games Workshop are putting forward as this is what we have updated officially in inverted commas, that perception, that is perceived as being the way to play, right?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that there are people who just choose to play how they want, like me. But it seems like broadly, and you can understand this, right? You can understand this. If 10th edition was your first edition, you'd be like, oh, they're making updates. I better make sure I'm playing, you know, this. How many points do people play? They play 2,000 points? Okay, but 2,000 points, that's what it is, you know. Recently, I have been gravitating and trying. I've tried like 3,000 point games, 4,000 point games, 2,000. My favorite game to play right now, if I was playing a quick game, like a sort of standard game, 2,500 points. Yeah, 2,500. I've said this so much.
We've talked about this. 2,000.
Yeah, we talked about this. 2,500 points for me is this really sweet spot. I really will continue to say that and push it as much as I can. Try a 2,500 point game, because it allows you to build a standard list and add something to that. Now, I for ages was just saying, like, add one big thing. Yeah. And you've got two big things on the table which are kind of going. There's no way you're probably going to be able to deal with them, so you've got to fight around them, which makes for a very interesting game, because you don't end up having two armies just kind of smashing for the middle, basically, right? Or, however, obviously the army's playing, sitting back and allowing the others to come forward or whatever, right? But nonetheless, you've got these two big things doing stuff. Now, it doesn't have to be that. You could take like two large units. You could take, you know, imagine if you're playing an Imperial Guard army. Okay, bang a knight in there, and then some other interesting element. Yeah. You know, couple of assassins. Have a knight and a couple of assassins. Something like that that's flavorful and just adds a dynamic to the game, right? But that's my point, is it's this perception of 2,000 points must follow the rules that are being updated all the time. It's like, no, you don't. You can do whatever the hell you like, right?
But no one putting a gun to your head and making you play the new edition. And I think this is something that people are slowly starting to wake up to.
I think they really are. I've seen that so much recently. People saying, well, I mean, we talked about this, but like with Heresy, whether online comments actually filter into reality is always a big question, because, you know, people really do like, of course, to just like comment bomb and like rant about stuff. Yeah. However, I don't think there are too many people who don't play a specific game who are just going to be coming out of nowhere going, oh yeah, I'm sticking with this edition because blah 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 blah. That's not the kind of comment people make when they're just like shit posting, you know. It's or just like I say, just kind of, you know, walling comments for the sake of it. I think if somebody's like, yeah, I am sticking to this edition and this is my reasoning as to why, I'm like, okay, that person plays the game, you know.
Yes, it's not just if you see a comment that's like, you know, let's use Heresy for example, because like that's kind of a hot topic at the moment. If you see a comment in the video that simply says 3.0 is trash, I'm sticking with 2.0, it could be a sincere comment. It could also just be someone jumping on the bandwagon. If you see someone who has, it doesn't have to be like War and Peace, but there is more than just saying it's trash. There is additional bits in that comment saying, I don't like this aspect of the game. I'm not feeling this. But, it's like, maybe it's 3 or 4 sentences.
I saw one this morning was like, I saw one this morning. Guy was like, my army's redundant now. I'm selling it. He's like, loads of my units just can't be taken, so I'm selling my army now. It's that kind of thing, basically.
I mean, I feel like that one is probably that. I would put that in the category of hate wagon, because it's very hard to just sell something. Like
I don't know, because recently, like there were some people. See, here's the thing. This is what we're talking about in terms of people having different views. I will never sell any model that I have personally made. Okay.
Yeah, same for me.
I will never do that. Okay, because the amount of time and effort it takes. However, I know people who will build a whole army, play it for like 6 months, and then sell it the whole lot. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like, I could never do that, right? So there are some people who are like, and the other thing is sometimes if you haven't got really invested in a system, okay? Because again, I would imagine the large majority of your audience that are watching and listening will have built an army or in the middle of building an army, okay? But for anybody who hasn't, building an army of any game system is a quite significant undertaking in terms of time and effort and planning and concentration.
It's intensive.
You are putting a lot of yourself into that. So now imagine that you've spent all that time choosing units, building, maybe creating something of a narrative for your army. You spend 8, 9, 10 months building, painting, getting ready to play the game that you want to, and then somebody pulls the rug out and goes, sorry, it's all changed now. I can fully understand people going, do you know what, F this, I'm banging it, I'm done, I'm going to do something else now. I can fully see that. So I don't think that's necessarily a hating comment. I think it can be a very legitimate comment of somebody who's just said, do you know what, I've had enough, sorry.
I don't want to be in this ecosystem anymore. I am going somewhere else. And I do think, and people do things in the heat at the moment. Like there was that, when Age of Sigmar came about, there's that very famous video of that dude that burnt his entire Dark Elf army from Warhammer Fantasy because he was like, there's no way I'm jumping on Age of Sigmar.
There was that time when the Iron Warriors just became kind of like, they got changed out and everybody was like, well, I'm selling my army. But I think that was supposed to be sort of meta players, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yeah, probably.
The Iron Warriors.
I do find meta players will buy and sell armies relatively quickly because if you are chasing the meta, if you're chasing meta, selling your army once the thing has become quite obviously nerfed for what could be the next 12 to 36 months, depending on what point you are in the edition, it makes sense to recoup those funds and then put them back into the next meta thing, because that actually weirdly does cut the cost a lot. Yeah.
But this comes back around to, you see, this thing about people having specific perspectives of what they need and look and want to get out of a game. Because as I said in the beginning, none of those things is like wrong fundamentally. And this is why I wanted to look and experience and try some of the more organized play that I never do, because I felt like, well, I can't really have a particular, I know what I feel, but I can't really have an opinion without actually going to some events. And I've done one event and it was more casual, and I may go to a more intensive event just so that I can experience that and then talk to it more. I still have like a preconceived, and I would always be honest and say, like, I have a preconceived bias as to how I imagine it will be and how I will feel, but that doesn't mean to say that necessarily I will afterwards. But my point is that when you're talking about, like, we talk about like, oh, casual players, sweaty players, meta players, we can use all these terms, but ultimately people have a sort of a goal, they have a desire to play and get something specific out of it. People can talk negatively about the way others play, but it doesn't fundamentally mean that's wrong. And I'll use a couple of examples, because when you were introing that sort of earlier, I wrote down these little things here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like I was saying, I will never sell a model that I've painted, because when I'm doing that, I'll try and add some personalization into it. Nobody's ever going to see it on the table, but I know that it's there.
Yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
one of my knights, for example, that was done by me and not by Siege. I painted the inside of that guy's cockpit, the pilot cockpit for the knight. I painted the entire inside, and then bang, put the top door on. Never going to look inside again.
Did you glue it on?
Painted really well. No, I didn't.
Oh, that's all right.
I couldn't bring myself to do it. I know that's a power move. I did see that the other day on a Instagram, and I think they were just memeing around. But it was very funny. Where he painted the inside. I think it was like a rhino door or something, and he painted the inside, and he painted like the control panel with like ultra fine, like literally like little radar, as literally as high detail as you could, and then he like super glued the door on.
Yeah, honestly, there was a trend, and it must have been 10, 15 years ago now, but there was a trend of people doing that with like rhinos and land raiders. I think there's certain parts of the like I can't remember, and I've built precisely one land raider in my life, but I'm sure that not just in the bit where the assault ramp is, but in other areas of the land raider, there are inside details. And or maybe it was just the bit with the assault ramp, and some dude like painted it all up and then just glued it shut, and like everyone was like, oh yeah, looking forward to sealing up this for, maybe someone will crack it open years later and find my hard work. And I was just like, no one's gonna do that.
No. But so thinking about, again, like sort of what people are trying to get out of it, and it's like, so you'll have people who will paint like that. They'll paint these insane levels of detail, and then you will have people that are going to tournaments, they're doing the meta, bang, they want 3 colors on those models, and it's just like 2 of them can be roughly airbrushed, and then maybe they just hit the key points across it. Maybe they got decals on, maybe not. So my point is, selling that kind of army is wildly different than selling an army where you've gone through and written the name on every single character. Like that is entirely a different thing. And again, it's not to describe either as wrong or the right or wrong way to do it. It's just that people will have completely polar like outlooks on what they are trying to get out of something. And with that in mind, in terms of like what you were saying about people trying to do like a crusade game or a more narrative thing, and it getting ruined halfway through because people are just so incompatible, really. What do you do about that? And what do you do about that? And my answer really is, I don't really have an answer for that, honestly. And it's something that people just have to work through using their social abilities, just communicating, describing, being upfront about how and what you want the game to be, I would suggest, is probably one thing. Like, explain like, hey, look, so this is kind of what I want this game to be, and try to have a lens to that. Thinking again about my past gaming history in my life, right? I used to play World of Warcraft a ton back in the day.
I never played it, I'm glad. I think it's a good job I avoided it.
Yeah.
I couldn't
personality.
do it now. No, I think it's a good job I avoided it.
Well, my attitude with WoW and with a lot of things is, you go all in or not at all, right? Which is funny considering how kind of more like flexible and chill I am with actually playing Warhammer 40,000. Like, my mentality towards a lot of things would sort of suggest that I should be playing like tournament play, like to a crazy degree.
I have a theory about this, but I'll come back to it in a second.
Yeah, I think I've kind of moved past that point. But my point is people play sort of PvP and sort of, online against each other for different reasons. And back when I used to do WoW, I was in a PvP guild, which meant that we were grinding like this kind of ladder system for points, which basically would unlock specialist gear, which you could only get by progressing through the ladder. But everybody else on the server is essentially doing the same thing. So you are sort of in this constant battle to score enough points to kind of come up that week a little bit, and then it resets, and then you do the same thing again. So the only way you can progress is grind those PvP games.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And what that meant was there's a great battleground in WoW where basically you had sort of five it's kind of capture the position, sort of points. So you have like 5 points a home. It's basically like in 40k essentially. You've got like a home deployment and then 3 in the middle, and you've got to cap those points from one another basically.
Okay.
And you each have like a bar of objective points, and it drains off.
It's like Company of Heroes. That's what I used to play quite a bit of that.
Yeah. There's so many games which are doing like this, right? Conquest, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
And because the players that are playing like just ordinarily are just obviously like random players, just kind of trying their best. Players that are playing to progress that ladder, essentially like competitive tournament sort of style players, we were just coming out of the gate charging, and it's like, okay, 2 people are going on these points, we know we only need 1 on this guy, and everybody else is pushing right to their home base immediately, right out the gate. And you would decimate, half of them wouldn't even get to the points in time because we're using stuff to make us go faster, etc. You decimate anybody who comes onto those points, you push them back to their home base, you cap their home base and slaughter them as they're coming out, and the game's over in like under a minute. And then you're on to the next one. And it was, I'm not even joking. And then you're onto and then that immediately finishes, you immediately queue for the next game and start again and again and again and again and again. And a lot of the time we would win games as well. It actually became very problematic because we would join a game, people would see our ranks listed on the side, and they'd just quit out immediately. They're like, no, not playing them. But my point is, and I had this discussion later, and I had this discussion in games like Battlefield as well, where it's like, if you have a real good, tight, really strong FPS group of players on an ordinary server, they will decimate it. They will ruin the game for other people. And it's like,
that's true. But that's very true.
Yeah, and it's like, but are you doing anything wrong? No. And it's the same with WoW and PvP. It's like, okay, we 100% knew that we were making the game like miserable for other people who were just trying to like have a normal game. But we were doing this system which was set up. It dictated like what we were supposed to be doing. It was like you had to do it that way. There was no other way to do it. You had to do it that way. My point is,
think the gaming community. Very quickly, I think that the 40k community is probably going through what the gaming community went through a few years, well, over many years. But you don't really, you don't really see that like. And I please, if you play video games, tell me I'm wrong, because I play them nowhere near as much as I used to. But there used to be this attitude of, oh, they're coming in and ruining the game, and they're sweaty, no life in gamers. And then there was this sort of, at first it was said ironically, but now I think it has actually been somewhat said seriously. Get good. That was the video game mentality. And kind of what happened with video games is the people that wanted to play the more casual and immersive kind of video games, they now go and play those games, and the people that want to play the sweaty competitive games now play those games. And it's kind of like what we were saying before with tabletop, where 40k, the community has very much become more, and not only more competitive focused, but they are gladly competitively focused because they've got good. And now you're starting to find, that these other people, the people that were more flavor and immersive focus have started going to other game systems. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And, I don't think I need to finish my point. My point was simply just that our objective was what the game dictated we should be doing. Like, we were within that system, and there was no other way to do it. So we often did talk about and say, I feel really bad for those guys. We fucking, smash them into the back. Like, but it's just, it is what it is. Like, you can't do it any other way. And it's the same like when you're playing other FPS games. However, the one thing that I note is, and makes me sound like a bit of an old man, but like the way a lot of kind of multiplayer FPS games played very differently to how it became, in the sense that a lot of the classic games like Battlefield, even Call of Duty, I guess, really back in the day, and I guess Counter-Strike and stuff like that, they're very, very simple in what your objective of what you're trying to do in those games. It's like cap points, destroy this thing, and that's basically it. There's no other mix of confusion going on, right? So therefore, when players come into those games, it's like, right, this is what we're doing, and there's not really much else. I mean, you'll have people that focus on just getting the kills or whatever, but that is still contributing positively to everybody else who's trying to do other things, right? And so people were very just objectively focused on what they were doing, not because necessarily they wanted to be, but because the game didn't allow for much else. And so I always found that those created the most intensive games. And one of the reasons why I eventually moved away from Battlefield was that they added so many other things for people to be doing. It completely detracted from the core of the game. And I found, and many people found, that it basically undermined and just destroyed the game, which is why so many people I know just abandoned it at that point. It wasn't that the game mechanics of the actual game itself were unenjoyable, but just the fact that they had like daily missions, weird machines you could jump into like in a game, which took people out from the ground and and it just kind of, there was there's too many other things. You'd have people who would join into a game and they'd be doing they'd be completely detached, just doing their own thing. They're just not interested in playing the actual game because they're like, oh, I've got this quest, I need to not quest, I've got a daily mission, I've got to destroy people with C4, and so they're dicking around doing that instead of actually playing. And the trouble is, you think, well, that's okay, it doesn't matter too much, and it's like, right, but when you've got 5 people out of like 20 players each side, that's a quarter of your team. So you've got a quarter of your team not contributing to other things overall because they're so,
and now everyone's getting rolled over.
Well, they're getting killed like 20 times because they're trying to do this specific thing, and they'll get like 1 kill in that round and then go to the next round and just to do their daily mission that unlocks whatever skin, and it's kind of like, again, it makes you sound like a bit of an old man, but the point is the analogy I'm trying to make is it undermined the core of the game. And I feel like, in many respects, tournament play is that, like you say, that kind of refined thing where people are like, okay, I'm trying to play for the win. There's no real other reason you would be going than that necessarily, right? Although I have spoken to people who have said the people at the top and the people at the bottom are the ones who don't care too much actually about winning. It's the people in the middle who are trying to maintain their ratios.
The bottom tables are fine. Although, do you know what's my experience of tournaments is people on the top table, generally speaking, are incredible people. They're normal and they're good and they're fair, and you get very little chicanery on the top tables. It of course does happen, but generally you get very little chicanery. Weirdly, on the bottom tables, 90% of the time you'll meet someone who's just turned up with a complete meme army and they are just having the best time. But 10% of the time you'll get someone who's quite upset, and that they'll be sort of, and it's hard to say this without sounding like a massive dick, but basically a good example of this is my mate Alex. When he went to his first super major, he turned up and he had we went together, and he had brought his Makaris Vanquisher, which was terrible. It was a terrible unit at the time. It was massively overpriced, but he was going there and he found himself losing quite a few games, but he was okay with that because he had gone into the situation eyes wide open, being like, yes, I have made the decision to go with the Makaris Vanquisher, and I am just wanting an excuse to use this Fortal model for 2 days. And I'm just having a great time. And on one of his last games, he fought someone, and we've nicknamed this guy Minotaur Guy because he brought a Minotaur, an Imperial Guard Minotaur, which was also equally terrible. It was 2 basilisks that were strapped together but cost thrice the price. And this guy was just complaining incessantly about how overpowered the Makaris Vanquisher was when it was very obviously not overpowered. And this guy, it was really the reason this guy was at the bottom of the table wasn't because everything that he encountered was overpowered. It was just because he was just kind of shit. Like I said, there's no way of saying this, but there's no point in dancing around the subject. So you do find there is this small bit of people on the bottom tables which they're salty and they're on there and they're railing against the system, but it's kind of their fault that they are where they are. But then the middle tables. Generally the middle tables is fine. Generally, it's absolutely fine, and I would say 99% of all people that go to tournament are fine. But if you're going to encounter a knobhead, if you're going to encounter that guy, it's going to be in the middle tables. It's going to be in the people that are so desperate to get a positive win-loss ratio that they need that 3-2. They want that 4-1, and so that's where you'll find it. But it's people that like are trying too hard, and I cannot emphasize this enough. It is 1 in 100 games that I encounter someone like that, but it's always in the middle tables, not on the top
so
at all.
And again, with all the sort of analogies of like past games and so on, really the fundamental point we're trying to make is people are playing for different reasons, but there is also like a core fundamental to like obviously how the game works, and retaining that and retaining its integrity really matters a lot in what people are going to actually get out of the game, right? But again, while we're talking about sort of tournament to other stuff, Luke, the guy who has been helping me out, has done an absolutely fun. He's been ultra patient with me, asking
Nice.
like 10 times in a game. Like, so wait, if I put a Titanic model butted, he can shoot, right? Like, yeah, it's the fun. But for example, his outlook is, from what he's explained to me, is he goes into these games and he's like, he sees it like almost more like a chess game. Like it's more of a problem-solving puzzle piece moving element. It's literally like, start the game. This is what I'm going to do. These are the cards. All right, now, so that guy has to go there. This guy's going here. They're going to go here. I need to make sure I do that. And okay, your turn. And it's just like that to me is just like a foreign language. Like it's just so far away from where I am at in my head in terms of games. And again, it's just an interesting, but to me it's super interesting to hear that. Like it's so interesting to hear like that's where the person is coming from. And this whole big thing we're talking about, I think really what it comes down to is to I don't take personally if somebody brings a specific army and I get brutally tabled, like because
unless it's Tau.
Whatever. Yes, but no, any army, because it's like they, for example, when I went to the tabletop tactics thing, when we were all sort of waiting, we were all sort of grouping up in the morning, just standing outside having a chat, and there's a bloke there, and he just looked the most friendly, nice guy. Never met him, and I just sort of said, "Oh, hello," we're having a chat, and I went, "Oh, I see you've got knights in your box there," like, and he's just, and he was just like, yeah. And it
he
is
knew,
that kind of
and
thing.
you knew. You both knew.
It's just a funny conversation to have.
He was a perfectly nice person, but he was coming to win.
Well, I didn't play him, but somebody I knew did. That's the thing. I think it's just funny where you'll get players as well who have just like, through no fault of their own, ended up with an army that everyone's like, boo, and it's just kind of like, that's very funny.
He knew what he was doing. He could have submitted any list to that tournament, man. Don't believe that bullshit. Don't believe that. Right, Lutz, I'm gonna. You're new to this. You're new to this, right? You're not to content creation. You're new to the competitive scene. Okay, I don't mean to alarm you, but
very naive.
You are being naive. That guy knew exactly what he was doing. He chose to submit that list to that event. I have had literally I now pull people's leg about this in real life on the tabletop, and you know what's really funny? They don't get upset by it. They almost it's like it sounds really fucked up, but it's
seen through the charade. Like,
they know you've seen through the charade, and it's like the psychopath's mask slips, and they actually like that sounds awful, but I was at this event. Literally, I was at this. It was a 2-day GT. I did a whole tournament after action report. It was the teams one, and I was talking to this guy, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I was running. I can't remember what he said. I originally was running this, but I've gone over to Tau recently," and he was like, "Oh," and I gave him. I sort of, gave him the like, "Oh yeah, over to Tau after they've had all their buffs," kind of thing. He went, "No, I'm really, I really into the battle suits." And I went, I thought, I was like, this could go one way. You might not take this joke very well. But I said, oh yeah, you're really into the narrative, are you? Like the battlesuits, do you? Is the narrative of your army, I win? I went, I know your ass. I've got your number. You can't. I've heard it all before, mate. Just be honest. And it was funny. He went from like, oh yeah, I've got Tau, but it's just for the thing. It's like this sly grin came over his face because he knew that I knew, and I knew that he knew, and he went, yeah, no, I'm here to win games. And I went, dude, just be upfront about it. I respect you more. Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that was a real, genuine conversation. I'm obviously paraphrasing slightly, but that is not and then everyone clapped. That was a genuine thing. And it's funny, like, if people will say, oh, they're just into X faction because that's what they've always been into. And it's like, oh, it's funny that you just so happen to have got very interested flavorly and narratively in the faction that's going around bumming people right now. The thing is, I once got someone once teased me. One of my good mates once teased me. It was a chap called Stu, and it was back in 8th edition. And it was when Guard had been absolutely terrible all through 6th and 7th edition. And 8th edition came out and Guard were very, very powerful. And Stu said, oh, look at this guy jumping on the Guard bandwagon. And I was like, bro, how can you even say that? He went, you jumped on the bandwagon so early, mate. You're driving the bandwagon. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, well, like I said, conveniently, my Knight army is just about finished. So good timing for me. Obviously, I need to get some use out of them now. They've all been painted up. So
it's amazing that hobby motivation kicked in just at the same time. It's weird, that, isn't it?
But I mean, to sort of come back to the whole thing, this thing of like people, there being some people who are building an army to win and nothing else. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, when you're talking about sort of how do you ensure that you have, like, for example, a good narrative game, and what is a narrative game? What the hell does that mean? It's very vague. And I think the key thing really that I want to try and focus on when I'm talking about it in the future is just to sort of be reassuring to people, I think, and say, look, yeah, you can follow all the stuff if you want, but you also don't have to. Like, it's gonna be okay. All right, you can do what you want to do. All right, it'll be all right. For example, people saying like, oh, Titans, there's shit on the tabletop. Yeah, because they're kind of not really designed to be compatible with that scale. All right, but they could be if you were clever. They could be. Yeah. You could get like an Adeptus Titanicus Datish card for that in Titan, and you could play the Titan as if it was using that data card in the same way. So don't just do, okay, it saves and a shield, use the Titanicus data card, so you have to drop its void shield, and then if it doesn't have a void shield, you can just start smashing anything at it and it's going to like wither it down. Okay, maybe if you focus on a specific part of that, like, because with Titanicus, again, you're rolling to see which part of the Titan you actually hit.
Yeah, it's like Battletech.
So yeah. So again, if you've got like all of it, like basically imagine you've been generally just firing crap at the Titan throughout the game, and it manages to just collapse its void shield. The void shield goes down. Well, then in your next turn, any of your tanks are going on that Titan. Like, they've been dealing with other things, but now the commander's like, void shield's down, engage. All the tanks are firing at that Titan now. More exciting, because now, like, you would never have killed it across the entire game if that had not happened. But now they're down. It's like, damn, you could kill it this turn. You could maybe not destroy it fully, but you might take out its leg and the whole thing's going to collapse.
Oh, man.
That's a narrative game to me. You take different elements and piece it together to make something more interesting.
100%. And now, two things. One, very quickly, you that like immersion of just you saying right there, like, void shield down, like, bring it down now. It's kind of like, it reminded me, it reminded me of that old War of the Worlds film with Tom Cruise. And at the end, he's like, look at the birds, look at the goddamn birds, no shield. And all of the soldiers turn around and go, and the sergeant turns around to his men. It's like, load the javelin. And I can imagine like that taking place in like in 40k, and like one of the soldiers being like, "No shields! Look at the goddamn birds!" And the birds are starting to like land on the Titan, and the lieutenant turns around to like his guardsman, and he's like, "Load the crack rocket! Bring up the last cannon! It's gonna be a tough kill!" And they're like trying to bring it down. But
I mean, for me, sorry, go on. Yeah, no.
Very, very quickly, what you are describing, I actually 100% agree with you on that is a narrative game. The problem that I think, and I know what the problem is, and I also have the solution. The problem is that when you're in a 1v1 situation, and the moment you apply, the boundary of 2,000 points, that is like we said. There's no reward for being more.
But that's why 2000 doesn't work, and that's why if you're doing these kind of games, you've got to be clear up the front. You're like, okay, I'm not really interested in like meta stuff. I'm not really interested in, I don't want to use the Pariah Nexus pack. We're just going to play, but we are going to play like a base mission. We just play a base mission of like, okay, score from second turn, score these for the 3 middle ones or whatever. Or for example, to make it more swingy. Like I said, when I played that game with Winters with my Necron a little while ago, we were like, okay, there's no, the rear point scores were like 1 or something if you control it per turn, but the middle ones are D3, so there's like 2 in the middle, and it's like each score D3.
That's
so
cool.
if you're one of those, by the end of the round, you basically score D3, and it's like adds more swing, adds more pressure, and a bit of randomness, so you're not worrying about it too much. But you've got to kind of go into it and be clear with people what you want. I personally don't think it'll ever be a problem for me in terms of the games I want to get, because I will look to find people that will want to play that way, However, I do think there are issues with that, and it's easy to sit here and go, oh yeah, you should do it like this, you should do it like that. I guess there's no answer to this. It's just an unfortunate thing. But for example, I know people who, again, and I see this people discussing online, there are people who live like in the bang middle of nowhere in the US or in Europe and stuff like that. There's a friend I know who lives in, I believe, like Finland, and his local group, his local club are just like ultra hardcore for like sweating their balls off,
And he can't do anything about it because that's the only group he's got.
Yeah, and he will go and play, and he still has a fun time. But a while back he was playing Genestealer Cults, and he was just like, oh, this.
Yeah.
It's like, and unfortunately that is kind of the thing. But I would always hope that somebody would be like, if you as a player went to people you regularly play with and said, hey, do you know what? Would you like to try something different with me? Like this weekend, like let's try to do this other style of a game. We're going to have, just a random mix of terrain, and I'm going to make a mission and stuff. I would always hope that people can just make that happen. And I think, again, this is part of the thing that I want to try and speak to is, don't necessarily just accept the status quo. Don't just accept how things are. Voice what you want to see from people. For example, okay,
be the change you want to see. If you want to see this, be the change. One thing I would say is you are right, and I have evidence for you being right. And I think there is a real hunger and a real community out there. The problem is that people are struggling to find other people. If I may shamelessly plug for a moment, I now run an annual Apocalypse event, and I've done it 3 years in a row now, and it's really it is everything that you are describing. And what's really interesting about the game is that when you start playing the game at such a points level, it becomes impossible to have perfectly balanced teams. So we just say, look, it's a guideline. Bring up to 5,000 points. You can bring more, you can bring less, but if you bring more, it's more for you to manage. The teams, and the teams will not be balanced. You might get into a scenario where the enemy team has got 30,000, 40,000 points on their side, and you guys have got 20 or 25,000. That's okay. Don't worry. The event accommodates that, and it actually took a couple of years for people to really, for everyone to really get it. But we didn't have cumulative scoring. There was how the missions worked is there was a very simple overarching mission, and then for each table we had like 8, and we've got 8 tables, and how, and then so for example, say to the, let's say you've got the Chaos team attacking a Hive City. We'll say, your goal is to attack the Hive City and get to the Central Palace. How you achieve that is entirely up to you. What you do along the way to do that is entirely up to you. And even if you don't manage to succeed in your mission, we will be keeping an eye on how we're keeping an eye on the journey as much as we're keeping an eye on the actual end game result. And what's really interesting is two things happen with these events. And both things that happened solve the two biggest complaints of that people have of 40k. You've got the flavor and you've got the sweatiness. So if it is very difficult to bring a hyper efficient list when you start getting like above 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 points, because you're not playing your 5,000 points versus someone else's 5,000 points.
Yeah,
it's your 5,000 points versus 30,000 points to the other side of the table, and you might be like, oh yes, Shadow Swords are really good in these big games, and then you just lose 3 or 4 Shadow Swords in one turn because well, everyone knows they're really good, so they wipe them out. It's you're not fighting a 1v1. So immediately the idea of being sweaty and being efficient, being competitive just basically goes out the window. So that takes the pressure out of that. So now it stops being I must take the most efficient thing, and also because the teams are going to be a bit mismatched. It takes the pressure out of it. It just becomes, well, what do I want to take in my 3, 4, 5,000 points? What do I want to take? Okay, I'll just take the stuff that I want to take, because there's no point in trying to be efficient, because people tried this in the first couple of years and it's like there's no point in trying to be efficient because it's just a lot of wasted effort. So instead I can go pure vibes, and I do just as well going pure vibes as I do going pure sweat. And what's funny is the people that want to go pure sweat can still go pure sweat. But it doesn't, because there's so many points going on. It does, that your list being 1% more efficient is a drop in the bucket in comparison to what's going on. And the people who are pure vibes aren't being left behind. And the other thing that I just want to say quickly is it's not a 1v1. One of the big problems it's not a big problem, but one of the reasons why 40k is so competitive is it's a never-ending 1v1 tournament. It's like like playing ranked StarCraft or something like that. It's a never-ending 1v1. When you get into big games, it stops becoming about the mano a mano, and it becomes almost becomes like a co-op game. Yeah, there happens to be another team on the other side of the board, but really you're actually spending more time talking to your teammates, strategizing with your teammates, than you are interacting with the other players. And so it becomes less Call of Duty and it becomes more Helldivers. And one thing I would just say, and just to wrap all of this up, is in the first couple of years of Thanatos, because that's what we call the events. You had Fate of Thanatos, Doom of Thanatos, Fall of Thanatos, and in the first couple of years, you had the Chaos team and you had the Imperium team, and the Chaos team was very quintessential Chaos, where they didn't plan anything. They all turned up on the day and just met each other on the day. I'm like, hey, are you on the Chaos team? I'm on the Chaos team. Do you want to play together? Yeah, let's play together. And that's how they did it. And this happened for the first couple of years. Like there's a tradition of the Chaos team of people of turning up the day before, and everyone gets kebabs and beers. And then on the Imperial side, it was the complete opposite. They spent months planning what was going to be in each list, who was going to go on what tables. They had actual battle plans where they're like, okay, you're going to deploy here, and then like turn 1 you're going to move to here. And the first couple of years, the Imperium team, even though they won more of the games, they went away from the events feeling quite unsatisfied because they had won games, but they hadn't done anything particularly epic or narrative. And so even though they had, and this fed into the world building of the event, it was like, okay, so yeah, you won that game, but the Chaos team did a massive human sacrifice. And the reason you won that game is because out of 40,000 points that were on the Chaos side of the board, they purposely self-deleted 20,000 points of them in a in a massive human sacrifice to open a warp portal on the planet. So they have given up the chance of winning the game, but they have forged the narrative. And this is a narrative event. And so they have ended up... So yeah, you won the battle. Well done. But in terms of the world building, they've had the narrative win. And it took a couple of years for the Imperial team to really... for this to sink in. And they were like, but we're winning the games. Like, yep, you're winning the games. Well done. But the Chaos team has basically sacked off the mission to forge the narrative, because the whole... And I've said... And you've not been... No one's been misled. I've said this time and time again. It's a sandbox. I've given you guys an overarching mission, but it's entirely up to you how you interact with it. And we finally got to the 3rd year, the final part of this trilogy. We're running a new campaign next year, but we finally got to the 3rd year, and the Imperial team, like they said, look, the Imperial team captains, they got all together with all the players, and they said the mission this year is to not to be try hard. If you win your games, that's great. But just turn that off and just forge the narrative. Embrace the narrative, because this is not a tournament, it's an event. And this 3rd year was the best year that we've had. Everybody went away satisfied. The people that wanted to be sweaty on individual level were able to do that. There was no pressure from anyone to like win the games or anything like that. And the narrative just, it flowed. It was, in my opinion, it was the first time since the great reset of 8th edition that I have seen what I would call true 40k. It might even be the first time I've ever seen it. True 40k, what the original vision of the game was. People playing, focus on the story, trying to win, but not trying to win at all costs. And it was just, it was chef's kiss. So all I'm going to say, Lutz, is not only am I shamelessly plugging this event to everyone who's going to watch this, but also I'm going to shamelessly plug it to you. If you are looking for people... I'm not going to, no pressure, bro, but seriously, if you're trying to find that, and if that's where you think you are as a player, this event is basically tailor-made for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is, there's so many different ways in which you can do, inverted commas, narrative play. You could try and have like asymmetric armies. You could try and do alternating turns. A lot of people say that 40k doesn't work with alternating turns. However, I've also seen, I think it was Val said something about like, okay, you basically have a bag full of dice, different colors or markers, whatever you want to choose, that basically denote other, however many units you each have. And basically you pick out, let's say it's a red one. It's like, oh, okay, you get to play
that's
a unit's move.
Yeah, that's the bot action system.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So and then, so maybe you get like 3 in a row, and it means you get to move 3 units in a row, and then, but eventually you're going to run out of moves, and the other person. And I really want to try that. I really want to try that, because I think that will add such an interesting dynamic. Is it going to work? Like, I don't know. But maybe you end up with some hybrid sort of iteration, which does work for really interesting. Maybe that's your own personal crusade style of game, who knows, right? But again, like with building an army, building a sort of more narrative army, you can't do a half measure. You can't be like, okay, well, I mean you can, but yeah. I wouldn't. The way I think about it is, if you're building a kind of more narrative list, which is just the story of your army, and then you want to play an interesting game, it's like you then can't be like, right, well, 1 millimeter of my unit can see you, so I'm definitely going to shoot. It's like, no, like you're either doing it or you're not, right?
Yeah.
So if you're building a narrative army, if you're building a story army, it's like they need to be doing those actions. It needs to be like, okay, my mob of orc boys, they're all going to die, but they are definitely charging that character right now. Like
you have to play the army how it would play.
Yeah. Those boys are charging that Catan. Like they're going to do it. Like,
yeah.
It's like they're going to get deleted. I won't be able to use them for the rest of the game. But there is no other scenario that would occur in that situation. That's exactly what is happening. They're not going to try and take cover and be sneaky and pop out. It's like, no, that's what they're going to do. One other thing I just wanted to add in actually was, we were talking earlier about the sort of narrative thing of shields down, engage.
Yeah.
One thing I've just felt for a long time is that Space, and I've seen people say this, Space Marines don't feel like Space Marines to me. The oath of moment thing, where it's just like I almost can hear it in my brain, where when I play games with people and it's just like, oh yeah, that's my oath of moment target,
that's my oath target,
blah blah blah.
That's it, that's all they say. That's my oath target. Yeah,
here's plus it's so dismissive, just like, oh yeah, that's my oath target, so of course blah 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 blah. And it's just like, no, that isn't how it should work. It should be like a once a game rule, where when the commander has a line of sight, kind of like Tau spotting, right? If a unit can
not
be
like
within
that,
a range.
Lutz.
No. I don't mean that. If they've got like a line of sight or whatever onto a specific unit, they can say that's the oath target, and it like massively increases, like, yeah, maybe like, you know, I don't know, like everybody gets reduced hits by like double or whatever, you know, some mad rule where it's basically like, yeah, they nuke that target down, but they can only use it once a game, and other than that they play, because Space Marines by default should be consistent and good. It's kind of like, you know, bloody stormtroopers in Star Wars. It's like, you know, they're supposed to be like these elite shots. Of course, everybody, you know, the meme of just like, they can't bloody hit a barn door. It's like Space Marines should by default be absolutely good. They shouldn't need to be targeting things all over the place unless
reporting for
the situation
duty, sir,
is extreme. You know? They should be by default doing well. Just they should be like a very like their stability of delivering like an attrition of shots and attacks and everything. It should be consistent, you know, obviously with in the sort of small flavor adjustments you're going to make for different chapters and whatnot, which of course are going to have their own little unique traits and whatnot, but overall that should be sort of how it feels. And so yeah, again, but my point is those are the kind of things where you could flavor out with narrative games, and I just think there is so much you could talk about in terms of those kind of games and how you could try and make them work. It's almost a never-ending thing. But I do think that my sort of final thought is just that I think there needs to be a more comprehensive conversation occurring about those kind of games. And there are people that are championing it, and I want to be one of those people. I want to be reminding people and telling people that you can play the way you want to play, that it's okay to do so. Try and, you know, we're talking about, okay, how can you ensure that people that are coming to the table are on the same page? You got to tell them, you got to use your social skills. You got to tell people like, hey, look, you know, this is the game I'm making, you know, I'm hoping that it'll kind of work like this, you know, but let's have a go and see what happens. You know, try and sort of lean them to understand like what you are looking to get out of that game. And I think also, yeah, people hosting events, you know, you've got your event that you're hosting. I think I would like to do something like that at some point as well. I think it'd be really interesting to say, you know, basically take the things that I have practiced and found work and that are interesting, and then take those things to a bigger setting and say, hey, look guys, so this is the things that I have found that I think really are fun and work really good. Let's try that and see what everybody else's experience is. I think that can be a really great thing. And I think ultimately, like you're saying with the sandbox, at the end of the day, putting rules out there for a game and building armies and so on and so on, once it's out there, it becomes the community. The community can play how they want to. They can make adjustments as they want to. And then, you know, you're in your own home. You can play absolutely however you want to at the end of the day. But I just think I would encourage people that if you have never played like more sort of fluffy narrative games which just have a twist and a slightly dictated by the lore decisions of your units, try that. You know, try and bring in maybe a mission from a previous edition if you have that available to you. If there was like I say, if you haven't checked it, the Pariah book from 9th edition. I know, is it 9th or 8th? It was 9th, yeah.
I think
it was 9th,
was it Psychic Awakening, or was it?
Yeah. It was, yeah.
I feel like Psychic Awakening was 8th, man.
God, time has passed so much.
I feel like it was, because
but anyway,
Psychic Awakening, the Greater Good was for the Guard. Yeah. Anyway, carry on.
Psyche Awakening prior book. At the back of that, I've said to people, there's loads of like environmental battle theater modifiers like Hive World, Warp Storm, all these kind of stuff. And you can basically just select them, or you can randomly determine them, and they just add a modifier to your game field. And they are absolutely like, they slot right in with like any edition of 40k, because they're very general, you know, and it just adds an interesting randomization element to your battlefield. And that kind of thing can be cool. I mean, another thing, let's just throw this in right at the end. Make terrain, which has actual purpose.
Make terrain great again.
You know? The classic green spiky red balls of the Death World, you know. Make a few of those. I've been saying, you know, make a few of those, dot them across the center of the battlefield. If you're within, like, say, 6 inches or 3 inches of one of those things, you roll a dice at the start of your turn. It takes D3 mortals, you know. Just add like a spice to it, you know, just something which just adds like these little modifiers. And I think once you start to add all those things, like I said at the beginning, it all comes out in the wash. Unless you're playing against a horrible rock paper scissors combination, which hopefully you're not, you know. But yeah, there's a lot to be enjoyed, and I'm still going through my journey, and I haven't ever found, like, you know, I've never found a sort of perfect mix at the moment, but I'm trying to get there, and I mean, if I find it, I'll let you know. So
yeah, no, dude, 100%. I think I would to add on to your final thoughts, my own sort of final thoughts. It's definitely not a summary, because you're not meant to add things into a summary and a conclusion. So this is this is genuinely a final thought to leave here hanging in the air for the viewers to consider. We used to tell GW to go shove it. As a community, GW would release stuff and the community would essentially fix it and sort it out. And this worked for a long time with things like the ITC. Anyone remembers ITC in like 8th edition and stuff will know what I'm talking about. And then somewhere along the line, around 9th edition and very much and then completely in 10th edition, the community decided that we were just going to do as GW told us. And I guess it's easy when you've got like one central authority, and you know, you can all read from the same hymn sheet. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't still listen to GW in terms of things like balance and whatnot. But my thought would be that, as Luke said, you can play the game that you want to play. And as I said earlier, no one's got a gun to your head and is making you to play a certain way. And if you are wanting to play more narratively, if you're wanting to play more flavorfully, if you want to play 2,500 points, you want to play 3,000 points, if you want to play Crusade or whatever it may be, you should be the change you want to be. Because I've seen this a lot when people want to get into other games outside of GW, they say, well, no one in my area plays it. And it's like, okay, but yeah, there's probably a lot of people who are thinking the same thing as you, but somebody needs to take the first step forward. And you know, that was and I'm not just talking the talk here. If I may inflate my ego slightly, I have walked the walk as well. For years, ever since I was a child, I wanted a massive narrative apocalypse style event where fighting through a hive city looked on the scale of fighting through a hive city. And after years of waiting for other people to make the event, I said, screw it, I'm going to make the event. And it has been resoundingly successful, because it turned out there were a lot of other people out there that felt the same way. And so this is what I'm saying. This is my final thought to the community out there. If you're someone that likes competitive play and all that kind of stuff, then yes, stick with it. Of course. But if you're someone that doesn't, or is feeling it's time for a little palate cleanser, a little holiday, in whatever capacity that may be, whether that's in the GW ecosystem or out of the GW ecosystem, be the change you want to see, and you will more than likely be pleasantly surprised at how much support you get for it. Well, at least that's what I think, anyway. There we go. All right, man. Does that feel like a nice, natural endpoint?
I think so, absolutely. Yeah. It was good chats.
Nice. Well, once again, I want to say massive thank you to Luetin09 for coming onto the channel. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let us know what you think down in the comment section below. We have waxed lyrical almost about the philosophy of Warhammer 40k, which is kind of cool. And truth be told, I wasn't sure that was how this was going to go. We had no plan for this. We just sort of we both agreed we wanted to do it off the cuff, let the conversation flow naturally.
Conversation.
It is.
Almost
it is.
Endless conversation.
Well, that means you're going to have to come back on and talk about it some more, doesn't it? Oh my God, just twisted his arm there. No, joking aside. Hi everyone, post-production Mordian Glory here. So something funny happened. Luetin and I got to the end of our conversation and we realized we hadn't talked about the one thing that we said we were going to talk about, which was his experience at his first ever tournament. Fortunately, Luetin very kindly offered to stick around for a bit longer and record some extra content. And originally I planned to splice this into the main conversation, but I went back through and listened to the whole thing and I realized that it had just had a really nice flow. It'd been a really good conversation between the two of us. He had riffed for a bit, I'd riffed for a bit. Both of us had prompted some thoughts from each other. It just felt really good. So rather than crowbarring this in and potentially sort of spoiling that original conversation, I've decided to, even if it's a bit disconnected, include it as a bonus round at the end of the video. So for those of you that are still watching at this point, thank you very much. And here is a little treat for you. Luetin's experience at his first ever competitive event. But you go on about narrative stuff, but Lutz, what about your recent conversion to being a sweaty tournament player?
Yeah. It's funny. I went to the Tabletop Tactics sort of open organized event recently, which I was strong-armed into by one of the Kierans from the Kieran show, and they basically were like, come along, you'll have a great time. It's something different. You should give it a crack. And they were like, it's very chill. Don't worry. It's like, it wasn't chill. 2.5 hours is like brutal for me to play a game in. Like that is just
2.5 hours is short. It's normally 40k rounds are 3 hours, and you even then people aren't talking out the final turn or two pretty normally. Yeah. And also, like, I know there's a whole conversation around talking stuff out, but I will skip over that today. So, but yeah, how was it? Because I haven't really been to these events before, mainly because I just have had a preconceived impression of how it is, and that I just am like, that doesn't appeal to me. And again, like as we will talk about today, it's not because I think that's necessarily bad or wrong or anything like that. It's literally just it doesn't appeal. It's just not how I look to play 40k. And so I was trying to do something totally out of my comfort space, basically, just out of my zone of comfort, and that's a really good thing to do. And so how did it go? I mean, basically it was a really, really fun, good day. The two games I had were really great games. Everybody there had an excellent time that I saw, and everyone was just really excited and having fun, cool games with the armies that they built and so on and so on. The time for me personally was short and tight, but it really focuses your mind. Whereas I find when I'm playing a standard game at home, I'll just be like, oh, I'm gonna go make some coffees. Yeah.
Just
no time for that.
It's chatting back and forth about should we do this? I don't know, like what should we think? You got to make a bloody decision. You got to get yourself together.
Yeah,
exactly. And with that in mind, things that I have never had to do before came into play. Like, for example, when I'm playing at home, I'm usually kind of like watching what they're doing. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. He's going for that. That's a really cool move. And then when it's my turn, I'm like, right then, so what am I going to do?
Yeah, we talked about this before the event. Yeah, you were like, how can I speed up? And I was like, you need to be planning what you're doing in their turn. Yeah.
I'm just like browsing my phone, having a nice relax in between turns, and then it gets to it's my turn. Okay, cool. Right, so what did you do? It's not like that, obviously, at all. So yeah, there was a lot of me sort of looking at what was happening and trying to pre-calculate what my moves were going to be and thinking, and also trying to actually genuinely remember. I prepared things to assist myself. For example, like I stacked up the data for all of the different units and took a single photo of them on my phone.
Cool.
So that, for example, I could just recall instantly like the list of all my stats in one single image. So it's like when we're going around doing moving and shooting, I can just see everything and it's just right there, because that way I just don't have to try and struggle to remember specific elements, you know, and that really helped a lot. I know Jay as well from Mohawk Minis, he was like, said another really good thing: make sure you stay nice and cleanly organized. You know, don't just have like a massive smush of all your cards or whatever you're bringing with you, and, you know, keep the dice organized into groups of set amounts, you know, doing that as well, obviously, and all that stuff helped, but just putting it into practice. But another thing was that you know, Luke, who's been helping me practice for doing sort of faster gameplay and so on and so on, another thing that he had said was that when you're actually there on the table, it's quite different than doing it remotely, where you're sort of overthinking, like, well, if I do this,
on
what's
TTS
the reason? Like, when you, just sort of trying to practice out and more learn about, you know, like why you're doing specific actions with units or moving them around or whatever, you know, like you're basically trying to learn, of course, like more how your army works. At a really fundamental level, so that when you're in a game, you don't have to be thinking about that. And I really found that helped me massively as well, because then when I came into the game, I was like, okay, I know what this thing is supposed to do, and this is where I'm going to position it because of this. And you're just trying to make the most logical decisions you can. Anyway, all of that might sound very standard stuff, but for somebody who usually plays quite casually and narratively at home, this is like night and day. Like, absolutely, you know.
It's wild for me to hear. Honestly, it's wild for me to hear this, because I no longer think during games of 40k. Like I no longer see the Matrix. I just see blonde, brunette, redhead.
Shouldn't that be the other way around?
I no longer know, because people will say to me, like, why, you know, why do you pick the units that you pick? Why do you play the way that you play? And it's like, and why do you put like, and I have this quite controversial stance that Mathhammer is a giant bag of bullshit. And the moment that I see someone start talking about statistics to try and prove an argument in an online Warhammer 40k argument, I just switch off and go, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Because for me, I just play off gut instinct now. And so I've got a big smile on my face, and it's a nice smile on my face, because hearing you go through this is genuinely taking me back to when I started my tournament and competitive journey 10 years ago, because I was exactly the same. I used to just, you know, the concept of having to like plan what I'm doing in my opponent's turn was like a conscious effort, whereas now I just sort of watch it, and when it comes to my turn, I'm just like, okay, so bam, 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 I've done all those things, and I'm not even thinking about it anymore. Does that make sense? So it's really, like, honestly, in a really, really nice way, it's really cool hearing someone, you know, go through that process for the first time. But anyway, I just wanted to say that. Carry on.
No, and I think that's some of the most interesting stuff which comes out of it, is having to adjust and rethink like how you're making those decisions. But you know, and this is my sort of general takeaway. Well, hold on. So the games I played were really good and fun and interesting. The first one I played was Custodes against Paul, and that was a great game. We both had a nice chat and a good, you know, we basically, both of my games got to the end of turn 3 was where we finished. But from what I heard, that was quite typical.
Yeah.
The people who did finished because one army or the other had obviously like smashed a bit
obliterated.
Harder. So, they didn't really need to get to like the end of the turn 5 or anything like that, you know. And if they did, it was because turn 4 and 5 were like quite tight, you know, like very short. But most of the time, from what I heard, I was sort of saying to people like, "Oh, how did that go? Oh, yeah, we finished at end of turn 3." And you know, so it's that kind of situation. But yeah, they both played out really well. First one, Custodes, and we were both quite tentative because he was new to this kind of thing as well. So that was actually really good for me. It didn't make me feel like I was panicking straight out of the gate, because I, you know, felt a lot of pressure being in that situation. I've got the time constraint. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting rules, and like someone going like, whoa, hold on, are you sure about that? You know, I didn't want to make any like, you know, glaring mistakes and misinterpret that or whatever. And I also wanted to make sure that I was giving a good game for the other person. I didn't want to be like fumbling around trying to remember what the hell I was supposed to be doing, you know. Like, I wanted to make sure that that person who had come there, paid to be there, you know, they'd come and paid to be there and traveled to be there. And you don't want to sort of go up against someone who just is like all over the place,
like a bumbling buffoon.
You know? Yeah, basically, yeah. You know, I didn't want to be, you know, ruining someone's day. So I wanted to make sure I was bringing like my concentrated game and give them a good game. And I feel like that's how it went. And so yeah, it was a good one. And I felt like I did the things that I needed to do. I felt competent and comfortable in what I was doing, which is good. You know,
did
like,
you
win? Again, going from. We did win the first one. Yeah, so that was good.
He's a killer. This one. He's a killer.
Again, I was again, probably people wondering, I haven't even said. So I'm playing Necrons and Hypercrypt. Okay, so that's what I'm playing. No. Because just relax. I've really my Necron army has been building for a good while, and I have genuinely got like plans for like multiple different iterations of it and how it's going to play. I want to build a more killy list. I've got a plan for a destroyer version of the army and so on and so on. There's loads of interesting things I need to do. I need to build like a Locust Lord, so I can put it with some Locust heavies for the emetics, so they can just kind of pop out and then nuke stuff. So it's like, that'll be enjoyable. So yeah, you know, it's and I find Hypercrypt to be really interesting because there is just so much to think about. And I actually said this when I was sort of practicing and learning prior to going to the event, was I sort of went, have I made this more complicated for myself by choosing this specific army? Because I think people obviously, Hypercrypt can be frustrating because, of course, you're moving stuff around all over the place, which is, you know, as another player, like maybe that's annoying, right? But from the perspective of a Hypercrypt player, you have to think a lot. Because you're constantly like having to think, okay, can I get this in here? What's my secondaries? Why do I need to get this in? Can I slide in here? Like, is it going to get nuked? Is that a good trade for that unit? You know, there's if you're just dropping in a unit and then basically throwing it away because it will get destroyed next round or whatever. So there's loads and loads and loads of stuff to think about. Whereas I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there are, for the most part, armies which are a little bit more sort of marching forward through the board, and of course, like Hypercrypt is not like that at all.
So there's basically two things. I have played into Hypercrypt so often that don't worry, I will take all of that complication away from you, Lutz, because my approach to Hypercrypt now is called bumper cars. Because you can't teleport away if you're in combat. And it turns out that most Necron units are weirdly shit in melee into vehicles. And so I just take a I had someone the other day who had like 3 bricks of wraiths. And I just put a chimera into each one. And he was like, oh, I'm fucked. Because he just couldn't do anything. And the entire game he was just tied up. So it's honestly, Hypercrypt is one of those armies where you might be worried about it being tricksy and frustrating and bullshit. It's honestly not. It's one of those armies that if you're playing against it, it seems really intimidating until you realize it is actually quite easy to essentially stop them from doing what they're trying to do. And then I imagine the script flips and it's quite frustrating for the Necron player. But yeah, no.
Well, and then that's what happened going into the second game then.
Yeah.
So the second game is Grey Knights. I forget the specific detachment, but it's the one where they are teleporting all over the place. So it's basically the mirror of my army. But the difference was I didn't get particularly good secondaries that round. I also dithered about placing I did that about placing a Deathmark unit in the corner of his side of the table to just score a secondary. I kept the card because I was like, I don't want that unit to just get wasted. Well, I probably should have just scored it, and I should have just scored it and picked up another card.
Yes, 100%.
So I kind of wasted that opportunity basically. And it was still a very interesting game. And Chris, who I played, was really great. He explained everything about his army so that I knew what was going on, because I said I haven't played these guys before, I don't know. So he went through and he was like, okay, these guys, this. And when he was moving stuff around, he was like, okay, so I'm moving this up here. he can do these, you know, and so it was very good. He said he normally plays as Necron, and found it very interesting that despite like a gargantuan effort, couldn't kill the Transcendent Catan, which was hilarious because it just kept saving everything all of the way.
It's a 4-up,
which was very funny.
It's a 4-up. Sometimes, you know, it's rarely. It might be 50-50 over the course of an event, but it's rarely 50-50 in each game.
Yeah. But the thing that was interesting was because he was Grey Knights, I did manage to take down his 2 knight suits, the really big dudes. Destroyed those, but it didn't matter because just the weight of infantry and the fact that I had not really too much that could handle that stuff, because my army is sort of built into scoring the secondaries and teleporting around and whatnot. There's not too much really that can go in there. My one solid unit, which has got the Translocation Lord and 5 Lich Guard, and then he's got like the Deep Strike Osteoclave on it as well. So together, like I can't remember off the top of my head, but anyway, that unit is like very, very tanky, and I can just kind of put it onto an objective. I do need to get some wraiths done, but for the time being, that was what that was supposed to do. Got nuked. Once I lost that unit, I couldn't control my progression point on one side of the table, and then I really struggled to keep control of things from there on, and it just kind of spiraled from there.
It was a linchpin.
I didn't get death. Yeah.
Or a lich pin. Sorry.
No, the lich guard.
No, yeah, but it was a lich pin. It was a bad. It was my bad pun. Please carry on.
I realize. I was like, wait, what? No. So it wasn't like a case of getting tabled, but it was definitely a case of just not being able to control those center points as much as I needed to, and just, you know, that was that game. But it was a good learning game, and I think that was the thing was the overall conclusion of the event was just a really good learning experience. You know, and it's left me with the question of, should I go forward and do more? You know, I got offered to go to another tournament, but it's talking about like, you know, multiple days, 3 games in a day, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like that sounds like a lot.
Yes, become one with the tournament player. Embrace matched play.
Do you know what was funny was going into it? I genuinely had a fear in the back of my mind of, is this gonna replace my kind of narrative play for me? Is it going to make me be like, you know what? Like, because I am a kind of person where if I get in on something and it triggers a thing in me, I just go all in on it.
Yeah, no life. Know? Yeah, you know life.
Yeah. And so I kind of was scared that was what could happen. But I think not, actually. Although I've just done this one event, and I'm not, you know, you shouldn't just do one thing and then be like, right, I've decided, you know, like I cannot see a scenario in which I go to another tournament event and come away and be like, you know what, this was life-changing for me. I'm all in on tournament play now. And I think I can confidently say that. But it's not to suggest that I didn't find it enjoyable. I had a great day and it was really fun. And there was lots of other people that I chatted to there as well, talked about their armies and talked about the lore and talked about, you know, events and how many events they'd been to and what they enjoyed about it. So the whole day was super enjoyable and loads of really great people. That was the thing, lots of great people to talk with. But I think for me, and we'll probably talk about this more soon through the video, through the episode today, what I look to get out of 40k personally, from my own singular opinion, is not that. You know, it's not about that sort of like metric play. It's not about that puzzle solving play, which is funny because I really like puzzle solving. I am a puzzle solving kind of person. It's why I get so weirdly drilled down on lore specifics and stuff. And it's why I like video games which create scenarios which you have to solve problems with. I really enjoy that. But in terms of 40k, that's not me. I think with 40k, I want a story to be told. You know, I want to bring an army to the table. I want units to die in dramatic fashion or get wiped out needlessly, and I want the story to evolve there. I don't want it to be singularly about, can this unit do an action at, so on and so on. Did you get a bad card draw? I don't want the enjoyment of a singular game to rest on that effectively. But as I say, any kind of community event will always be enjoyable, I think, because you are basically going to a place with a lot of like-minded people who are, for the most part, on the same page, and that's always going to be an enjoyable thing. But am I going to start grinding tournament events? Probably not, but it was a really good thing to do, and I am interested to have at least a look at something more.
So 2 things I would say. Firstly, 2.5 hours is not enough time. That will definitely have had a big impact on your experience at that event. What I tend to find is that...
can I just say one thing? Sorry.
Oh, of course, of course.
Just because you're talking about that time there. It's really short. Basically, it wasn't like they did have a hard dice down rule at 2.5 hours, but they also had allowed it so that you could play to a natural conclusion. So basically, if like I was in my turn 3 and I was first, he would still get to play his out, and then it's like, okay, now it makes sense to stop. So that's what we were doing. Fair.
But what you'll find is that that last half hour, you might be like, well, how would you get 2 more turns done in half an hour when you've only got 3 turns done in 2.5 hours? Well, you've got, especially if it's on the second game, terrain's been nudged, so you have to re-sort the terrain. You've got explaining each other's armies. You've got deployment and all that kind of stuff. It can take a while to get going. And truthfully, turns 2 and 3 tend to be the turns where everyone gets battered, and then turns 4 and 5 don't take very long. Turn 5 especially due to the nature that there's very few objectives that involve killing stuff. It's mostly like holding point stuff. Turn 5, you can kind of be like, well, I'm going to move all my guys here and score my points, and then they go, well, I'm going to move all my things there, and I'm going to score my points, and you go, cool. The number of turn 5s I've had that have taken literally 1 minute per side. So I think if you went to an event and the standard time for a round is 3 hours, I think that would feel like it would feel slightly more satisfying, because even if the last 2 turns only take a few minutes, ending on turn 3 still feels somewhat anticlimactic and feels like you haven't got to enjoy all of your meal, as it were. So that's the first thing I would say.
Sure.
Second thing I would say is I would suggest, and I don't know if this was the case, but I would suggest going to an event on your own can be a little... It's fine, but one of the best bits that I find from an event is you play your games, and then at the end of each round, you go and chat to people that you went to the event with, and you go, how did you get on? And then you go and get a coffee together, and then you go, oh, good luck in your next round. And afterwards you meet up again. You say, let's get lunch and all that. That
did happen for me.
Okay, good,
yeah, that did happen for me. And that's why I say that was a good part of the whole day. Yeah, quite honestly, if I'd have gone there and both games I'd just got absolutely smashed, like it would have still been a fun day for me.
Okay, fair. It wouldn't have been for me. I would have been livid.
But yeah, no, overall my conclusion was a fun day, and there was a lot of very interesting things to take away and learn. But I think for me, it didn't it didn't leave me walking away thinking, right, well, now I know I'm 100%. I'm never playing in a tournament again. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a tournament. I'm talking about, this was just a fun open day of sort of organized play, as it were. But yeah, no, I didn't come away thinking like, right, I'm never doing that again. It was a really good day, and I would absolutely go and do another day like that again. But would I want to do more than two games in a day? I don't know. That seems like a lot, but I can have a crack at it, and then I'll definitely know for sure.
And what about 7 games in 2 days?
No,
because see, if you go to a super major, you have to play 3 games day 1, and then 2 games day 2, and then if you win all 5 games, you have to go into the knockout round, where you have to play another game. And if you win that game, you then have to play in the finals. And if it's a really big event, you might even have to play 8 rounds to get, 7 rounds, and then the finals are 8 rounds in total. And so all 5 of those games you don't come back on Monday. There's those additional games have you playing into like 1 in the morning after starting at like 10 10 in the previous morning. So yeah.
So here's the thing with that, right? This is why I said, despite me knowing that at my core I'm a narrative kind of person, right? It's very easy to sit back and basically, just be like, if you're a narrative player and you're casual, or you're just playing local, or you're just playing with a group and you've not been to an organized day, that kind of thing. Like you were just saying, okay, I just played like a couple of games, right? Playing 3 games in a day is an overwhelming concept to me. Even these games today, I was just kind of like, oh, there's so much to think about, and your brain kind of feels like jelly-like at the end of it, right? So going and playing like more games than that is crazy, and it gives you an impression of just how like the skill level and the competency and the sort of knowledge base that you need to be having, like all of that information needs to be like right there for you. You need to have it memorized, you need to know it inside out. Like it all is going to have to be there for you to function at all, because you cannot be wasting time and energy thinking about those things. Players that are playing those kind of games will obviously have to be thinking about like, what is the enemy doing, like what are my objectives. They need to be focused on the key elements, not all the sort of other stuff. But I think another thing for me is, and again, like despite me being a very kind of narrative, just super casual player, despite me hating that phrasing,
filthy casual,
despite me being that kind of player, it doesn't mean that I'm not interested in certain things that are happening on the competitive, the organized side of things. For example, I remember you spoke about, but I'd seen it mentioned that at a recent sort of event, it was like there wasn't like a referee, there wasn't like a marshal or whatever in a sort of semi-final, I think it was, and then there was a bit of an incident or something, and because nobody was there, they kind of had to like decide about it. Well, anyway, my point is if you have already played like 3 or 4, 5, 6 games or whatever, and then you're coming into like semi-final, final situation, those players are going to have like had a lot to deal with already. And then now, so it's highly likely that they might forget something just naturally, or make a small error or whatever, something which could really impede the game. Somebody needs to be standing at that table watching. It's totally unacceptable for me, like thinking about like in that scenario, just logically, right? It's not acceptable that if you've played all that stuff, how is it fair on those people? They should have somebody there to kind of be able to be like, yep, sorry, that was not right, or he did forget that, it's not how it works, or whatever. It needs to be there being observed. But the point that I'm making is just that it's easy to criticize these things. It's easy to be like, oh, competitive players, blah blah blah. Unless you've actually gone and tried to do organized events, you're not going to know how it feels. You're not going to know how your headspace feels coming away for it. Because like we were saying before earlier, playing at home where I'm just like, I'm just going to make some coffees and stuff. Should we have a break for a little bit? Like, and just have a chat for
let's go for a walk. Let's get some fresh air. Like, we ain't got time for that. We've got no tournament. We ain't got time for that.
There's no break. I've had days where I've had people come to play a game, and we literally will go to the pub for like an hour and a half in the middle and come back.
I'm coming down doing a battle port at your place now, man. That's legit.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a pub about a minute away from where I live. Yeah, my local. It's a necessary requirement.
Anyway, my overall thought on events is I definitely want to do at least one more, just so that I feel like I have some further experience and reference to draw upon, but it's not to try and like frame either side. And I think this is really my general point through the day. There's definitely no like right way or wrong way about certain things. It's more about just having perspective so that it can inform what you want to be doing, but also just be able to have an opinion about the general way things are playing, whether that's new editions, FAQs, rebalancings, or stuff like what's happening with Heresy. I think that's my core thought there.
Do you know what we should do? I've thought of it. We should put together a team, a dream team, okay? And we should go to a team tournament, and it should be yourself, myself. We need two other YouTubers. Let's get Winters on this, and we will call ourselves. And this will make some people throw up in the comments. We will call ourselves the Influencers.
Oh, God, no. Jesus Christ. No.
And that's how we'll do it. That's how we'll do it. This is the way, but you know, this is the way. That's the next tournament you're doing. I'm telling you don't have a choice in this now. No, on a serious note, you will be very surprised, and you may not even realize it, but other people who you play against regularly who haven't been to a tournament will probably notice that you will play a bit differently after that event. It is amazing the world of difference it can make to a player's ability and skill going to even just one tournament, because you've now had the experience of having to think in your opponent's turn. You've had the experience of being under a bit of pressure. You've played against things you don't normally play against. You've had experiences that you don't normally have, and you now know, like, oh well, this unit can survive this amount of damage, this unit can't survive this amount of damage. It will really feed into it. And even just going to a single event, even a tournament with training wheels, I think you'll be surprised at how much it will have made you step up your game. Like, and you might not even notice it at first, but other people will.
It also makes you get shit done. I was up till like 2 a.m. the night before painting Doomsday Arcs.
Yes, the pre-tournament rush is real, man. It's taken me 20 years, but I finally don't have to paint before tournaments. It's amazing. It's a godsend. Let us know what you guys think down in the comment section. Know your thoughts, your feelings. Are you someone that loves competitive 40k? Are you someone that has, for a while now, felt something has been a bit wrong and you've been looking for something else? Are you someone that, has gone over to other game systems? What are your thoughts on, Heresy, Old World, Bolt Action, stuff like that? Just get it all down in the comment section, because I know it's going to be very, as Luetin and I have had, it's going to be a very interesting conversation. If you guys enjoyed today's video, as always, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. And once again, Luetin, I want to say a massive thank you for coming on.
No worries. Cheers.
Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.